Hello everybody, Sergeant Argyraid here, and today we're reacting to Kursk, the German Hail Mary by Potential History. This was recommended to me in my last in my second last video, and it was from 201st again. So yeah, thank you. I think I might have other suggestions, but I'll definitely react to those after this. And also, apparently, I have like a ton of viewers from outside the United States, from Poland, even Georgia, the United Kingdom, Germany, and a lot in Russia, probably from that Russian video that I did. But yeah, thank you all. Thank you. I think it's really cool. But if you're not American, well, guess what's happening in America right now? A part of America sort of like seceded, and they're their own autonomous zone called Chaz. So yeah, that's interesting. Anyways, I'm okay. Let's get started. Oh, we're back to this intro again. Actually, I think I should have reacted to first I should have reacted to Potential History's video about Fall Blau when Germany tried to invade the Caucasus. So, it's sort of in chronological order, but this is fine. I'll just react to that later. That's great news. Breaking news live.
It seems that a couple days ago, 6 July 1943, the German summer offensive has begun along the Kursk Bulge. We have a short statement from the German High Command saying, "We're going to win this time. Seriously, this will be the one. Like, really, we'll get it this time." Bold and maybe true words. I mean, they can't screw it up 3 times, can they? We actually have some exclusive footage from the battle unfolding. First, we'll check in with the Northern Front under the command of Walter Model.
That's pretty much what happened.
Looks like they're having a rough go at it. Now the Southern Front under Manstein. Looks like they're having a pretty rough go as well.
Well, it wasn't like a complete brick wall, they took some land.
Look, let's go to our man on the ground, Heinrich. Heinrich, can you hear me?
Jesus Christ.
It seems he's been killed. We'll update you more as the story goes along, like literally after this intro that's gone on for too long. But later on tonight at 10, 5 ways to spruce up that bombed out house. Summer of 1943 marked 2 years since the beginning of the war between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. In 1941, the Germans invaded with over 3 million troops divided among 3 army groups sweeping across the entirety of the Soviet Union. But after gaining much ground, the attacks were halted with the Soviet enemy still in one piece. In 1942, the attack was continued. This time, though, due to logistical and manpower restraints, only Army Group South would move forward in an attempt to take the Soviet oil fields and other desperately needed resources from the Caucasus. This, too, ended in failure, though, with the Germans being pushed back to their initial starting point and the entire Sixth Army being destroyed in Stalingrad. Despite these failures of the past 2 years, though, the Germans were ready to try again. The bold strategy. Let's see if it pays off for them. In July of 1943, they began.
Yeah, even if they did win Kursk, even if Germany did somehow win Kursk,
an offensive.
Like, at that point, it didn't matter. It was inevitable that Germany was going to lose.
Focused around the Kursk salient, an operation codenamed Operation Citadel. Over the winter and spring of 1943, a large bulge in the front line had developed around the city of Kursk, which became an obvious target for both the Germans and Soviets alike. The German plan was to launch 2 offensive spearheads, one from the northern and one from the southern ends of the bulge, to encircle the Soviet troops inside and regain the initiative in the war. Although not a horrible plan, this move was very much foreseen by the Soviets and confirmed by British codebreakers who passed their information along to the Red Army. As a result, the Soviets packed the salient with men and tanks, creating multiple concentric defense defensive rings around the city, and just waited for the Germans to attack. But this is only the start of the Germans' problems. In 1943, Germany is even less offensively capable than it was in the year previous. It can no longer support the offensive movements of a single army group.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're going to cover this later in the video, but one of the mistakes Germany did was Hitler, he decided to wait a little bit. Like, I think it was a couple of weeks or something like that, or a few weeks, for the new Panther tanks to come out. Well, I mean, which sort of makes sense, because those T-34s are very powerful. And, yeah. Germany needed weapons to be able to penetrate them. But at the same time, that gave the Soviets enough time they gave them even more time to prepare.
And has to pull what it can from Army Groups Center and South to create a force to carry out the offensive. This battle marks the first point in the war in which the Germans are heavily outnumbered before the operation begins. However, the Germans feel they have a trump card, the first deployment in mass of what many refer to as the third generation of German tanks, featuring 3 new models. First, the Mark V Panther, hastily created in response to the Russian T-34. On paper, it would be able to kill anything the Soviets threw at it. In reality, though, the Panther was extremely unreliable and plagued with problems in its early phases. 204 Panthers were able to be sent to Kursk. Of that, 2 caught fire before the battle began, with many more being written off as the battle continued. The worst of these mechanical losses was on the southern front late in the battle when, after some rain, multiple Panthers got stuck in a swamp due to their heavy weight and had to be recovered because water had gotten into their transmission. The Panthers at Kursk belonged to the 51st and 52nd Panzer Abteilung and were mostly concentrated in the southern bulge. Next was the Mark VI Tiger, which had seen limited combat in other theaters and in the east, but it got its first real baptism of fire at Kursk. Slightly more reliable than the Panther is that it had a longer development period. The Tigers at Kursk were assigned to heavy tank battalions that were attached to other units for support as needed. And although quite successful, only 146 Tigers were present at Kursk, very much limiting their impact. And lastly, we have the Ferdinand tank destroyers, of which there were 91 present in the northern sector. Boasting Germany's most powerful 88mm gun, the Ferdinands were very lackluster.
Hey, they put an 88 on there?
Wow. They were easily the most unreliable vehicle Germany fielded in World War II. Its petrol-electric generator drive was underpowered for the vehicle's weight, causing many vehicles to destroy themselves before the battle began, along with many being lost in combat by being overrun by infantry due to a lack of a close defense weapon. If you want more information about this thing, that is a meme tank in its own right, I did a video on it a while back. Now, these are the tanks that everybody remembers at Kursk. The shiny, new, heavy tanks that rack up the kills. What people forget, though, is how few of them there were, making up much less than half of the German tank force present. The majority of German tanks at Kursk were the obsolete Panzer III, with 668 vehicles present, and the more capable but still killable Panzer IV, of which 702 were present. So the image you should have of this battle should not be of Tigers, Panthers, and Ferdinands rolling over Soviet lines. It should be of Panzer IIIs and IVs, along with multiple types of self-propelled guns grinding forward while being supported and led by these newer heavy tanks. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, let's get to the battle. And to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of going over specific troop movements and attacks day by day. I'm more of a big concept guy, and you'll know that if you've seen any of my other videos. But to put it briefly, Operation Citadel bogged down almost immediately. Due to the aforementioned British intelligence and the testimony of a few German defectors, the Soviets knew for the Germans the moment the Germans were going to attack. This lack of surprise changed the game entirely for the Germans, who were so used to having it. The Luftwaffe, which now shared air parity with the Red Air Force, found themselves entangled in combat in the skies and often unable to support ground attacks. German panzer groups found themselves up against stiff resistance right off the bat against the layers of defenses set up around the salient. Basically, the battle devolved into a giant slugging match where attacks and counterattacks from both sides were fed into the meat grinder. Villages changed hands multiple times as lines moved back and forth. One very memorable example of the desperation of the fighting is of Joachim Kruger, who assumed command of his company after his commander had been wounded. In the midst of the fighting, He single-handedly charged a T-34 and in the process had a smoke grenade in his pocket ignited from a stray bullet, which ignited his clothes. It is reported that without skipping a beat, he removed his pants and underwear and continued charging forward to go and destroy the tank. With this level of ferocity, the Germans were able to slowly creep through the Soviet defenses, albeit much more so in the...
I don't think that was all Germans. I don't think you can just say that all of the Germans were like that. Wait, were the Germans still on meth? And is that why they're doing that? Because I know in like 1940, whenever they invaded France, the Germans were definitely on meth. They're able to, move quickly and just basically just be like super soldiers.
South and in the north. This began to make Soviet generals nervous, resorting to alternate types of defense such as entrenching their tanks, making them harder to hit, and attempts to sweep around behind the German offensives. The battle came to a head on July 12th in the southern front on the field of Prokhorovka, where 294 German and 616 Soviet tanks and self-propelled guns faced off against each other at very close quarters, along with units of mechanized infantry. This battle has often been falsely claimed as the largest tank battle of the war.
I know! It's so annoying how people always say that. It was like this battle in 1941. I forgot what it's called. But it's like it's like no one knows about it for some reason. Oh, look, it's Tick. What is it called? Dubino? Or Dupno? I don't think it was called Dupno, though.
Not. The honor of that actually goes to the Battle of Dubno in 1941.
Oh, I guess it was Dubno.
This was a huge armored engagement nonetheless. Also, Prokhorovka was not one large continuous battle. The field was
The what map actually is a pretty good representation.
Actually segmented into 3 different fields via a railroad upon a hill and another ridge. By the 12th, both sides had fought themselves to a standstill. This was only broken by Operation Kutuzov in the north, which counterattacked around the northern thrust by Army Group Center, threatening a cave-in of the northern front. And it's at this point that, along with news of the Allied invasion of Sicily, Hitler called off Operation Citadel, but allowed a continued offensive in the south from the 14th to the 17th called Operation Roland. This too, though, is quickly repelled, and the German southern flank retreats back to its lines and is later counterattacked on August 3rd as part of Operation... I'm not even going to try it. In the long delay for the counter on August 3rd as part of Operation...
Rumiantsev. I don't know. I tried.
I'm not even going to try it. And the long delay for the counterattack was a result of the heavy losses taken by the Voronezh front.
Rumiantsev. I think I got it.
During Operation Citadel. The Soviet offensives continued until August 23rd, 1943, concluding with the city of Kharkov being recaptured. Despite much being said about this battle, it's largely forgotten, at least in the West. And although I believe it's...
Forgotten? I don't know if it's been forgotten. Like, I'm not sure if the majority of, like, people know about it. But I mean, at the same time, it's not really that much of an important battle. All it really is a metaphor of the fact that Germany is beaten and they can't attack anymore. That's all. That's basically its entire significance. It didn't accomplish anything. The Soviets didn't accomplish anything. That was it.
More discussion. I think a lot of the conversation about it is wrong. I still often see people cite Kursk as the real turning point of the war. And I'm always...
What? I want to meet one of these people, and I just want to explain to them why they're wrong. Who thinks that Kursk is the turning point of the war? Who? What? Why would somebody think that? What the heck? People amaze me sometimes.
baffled by this. You never want to go
Me
into an
too.
analysis of history, speaking of things being predestined, in this example that Kursk was doomed from the start, but given the factors leading up to and during the execution of this battle for the Germans, it's very difficult to not view it that way. Before the Germans even launch, the Soviets know exactly where they're coming from and in what strengths. With the battle being postponed so many times to bring up more tanks, the Soviets were given plenty of time to plan their defense, and the result was the Germans running essentially straight into a wall. On the other side of this, German intelligence and counterintelligence, which was never really good throughout the war, was horrendous in the planning of this operation. Not only were their communications tapped by the British and sent to the Soviets, which was old news and had been happening for a while in 1943, the Germans miss entire army groups, about 7 altogether, when sizing up the Soviet strength in preparation for Citadel. The Germans had a fairly good grasp of how many Soviet troops were within the Kursk Bulge itself. They, however, had no idea about any of the reserves that were to take place in the counterattacks on the 12th. They paid dearly for it. And I bring all of this up because the biggest claim I hear pertaining to this being the possible turning point of the war is the myth that the Germans could have pulled out a win if stupid Hitler hadn't lost his nerve. Yeah, that same old story. This myth originates in Manstein's book Lost Victories, where he claims that the victory could have been achieved if the offensive had not been called off and the pincers had been able to connect. This
Lord help me. Ow, my eye. Ow. Ow. Okay, that hurts. Okay, anyways.
ignores 2 huge facts, though. One, Operation Kutuzov that smashed through the northern flank and probably would have cut off the German northern offensive had it not been withdrawn, was still going to happen, because the Germans had no knowledge of it. And 2, the fact that the southern attack was allowed to continue and still got stopped anyways. Looking at it from this broader view, it's not so much a fact that the attack was called off, it's the fact that the attack was stopped and had failed and was never going to succeed. Although it's objectively bad history, I don't think Kursk should be viewed as anything other than a Hail Mary, launched by an army
What does Hail Mary mean?
that knew nothing other than to attack, which had been their pattern so far throughout the war, and had always granted them, at least for some time, some success. For more information on that, check out this lecture by Rob Satina. Kursk may be the turning point of the end of major German offensives in the east, but at this point, the war has already been lost. And now, the German mentality of always being on the offensive is the only thing marching them forward, right into certain defeat.
Okay. Well, that is... Panthers, what? Okay, I don't understand. Anyways, that is... It's on the Kursk, the German Hail Mary. Thank you so much for watching. That was a very cool video. I'm glad this person knows what he's talking about. But seriously, it's no fun when I don't get to correct people. But yeah, this has been a great video. And if you want to see any more videos like this, like and subscribe. Comment what you want me to react to next. And I'll be sure to consider it. Anyways, goodbye.